12 years ago, I hung up the phone with Stacy. It was like a siren was going off in my head, and I just paced behind the bleachers where all the other parents were sitting, waiting for softball practice to be over. And I think, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Practice was eventually over. I took Sloan. We got in the car. We headed home. I remember thinking, for the first time in my life, I'd be better off dead. I should just go ahead and die. I wish I were dead. I thought about praying. I thought, God doesn't want to hear from me right now. Are you kidding me? I'm the last person on the planet that God wants. I betrayed him, right? I betrayed his church. I betrayed my wife and my kids. I betrayed everyone who was close to me, all these people in the church that trusted me. God does not want to hear from me. I never, ever felt so alone in my entire life, and there was nobody to blame for me but me. And I'm going to tell you something. That is one of the hardest seats you will ever sit in. And I thought to myself, God is just finished with me. So I get home. And I started scrambling around to get some things together. I think, and it's blurry, I think that the youngest two kids took a nap. I called Sydney and Sloan, my two oldest, in. I set them down in the family room. I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I started to explain to them what their dad had done. And part of their young hearts didn't really understand it all, but they just broke into tears. And it ripped my heart out of my chest. It's not the man I want to be. This is not the father. This is not the husband that I want to be. And so we did our best to spend some time trying to console them. And then I got my stuff. I was getting ready to leave. And Stace said, hey, I need to talk to you. And we walked to the front of the house. My officer, she stepped into the office with me. And she said, you can stay. She said, you can stay. And she made it clear that you could say, listen, and here's why. I'm an absolute mess. I'm so devastated. I don't know what side's up. We don't have family here. I don't have help with the kids. I'm going to need help with the girls. I can't care for the girls, and if they're better off having their dad care for them than anybody else. And so, yes, you're going to sleep on the couch. And there were no promises. I'm going to tell you something. She hated me in that moment. She didn't want anything to do with me. She didn't want to be close to me. She didn't want to be around me, and rightly so. She did. But there was no promises of anything, no promises of a future together, nothing. It's just, you can stay for the next few minutes today. It's just like one moment at a time. And here's the thing about that moment. There was no one there. There was no one there to advise her or counsel her or to say, you know what, you really should let Greg stay. In fact, everybody in their right mind, if they had counseled her, would have said, get him out of there. And what I want you to see is this. To this day, I know this to be true. There is no explanation for that moment in my story except for God. Where would I be today without that? There's no explanation except for God. God showed up. Right? He just showed up and he did his thing in that moment, and it just gave me a moment. And when I fast forward the story over the last 12 years from that moment to today, so here I stand, and I can honestly say to you, our marriage is better than it's ever been. That sounds unbelievable, but it's true. But here's what you need to know. In the first 3 or 4 years particularly, there were a lot of brutal moments. There were a lot of moments where I think Stace was going, you know what, I think this might be impossible. There may not be any way to overcome this. But here's what I want you to see. What seemed impossible turned out to be not so impossible after all. And the only explanation is the same explanation that David had in this moment. So many moments in my story, so many moments in this DCC story where the only explanation is God himself. Even when I am alone, even when I can't possibly feel more alone, I am not alone.